Welcome to an ASMAC triple header. Ancient Mexican instruments featuring Martine Espino, Paraguayan Harp featuring Dr. Alfredo Rolando Ortiz, and Indigenous sample libraries featuring Douglas Morton. You've been listening to Tecaztlipoca performed by Martine Espino. Please type your name and where you're from in the chat room, turn on your cameras for a few minutes and wave hello if you're so inclined. What's coming up? I hear you thinking that. This Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, Big Band Hangin' featuring Andy Farber and Scott Healy. Next Saturday, which is our last Saturday before Labor Day, a master class creating music from any situation featuring Ira Hershen, moderated by Sylvester Rivers. And both of those guys know their stuff. We all know that. ASMAC is excited to connect with our sister organization in Brazil, Music Magam Brasil, a Brazilian Association of Composers. They have invited us to attend Festival Musicmagam Brazil 2021, August 23rd through 29th. It's all, you can find out more information from soundtrackfest.com. We do know that John Ottman and Bruce Broughton are a couple of the people that are featured. So check that out. And I think you'll enjoy the fact you did. We recommend that you view this event using active speaker view in Zoom, located on the upper right-hand side of your screen. It's my great pleasure to introduce our illustrious president and one of the world's premier harpists and a friend to all of us, as we all know at this point, Ms. Gail Levant.
Oh, Glenn, thank you so much. Thank you, and welcome, everybody. I'm just so glad that we're all again together to celebrate today's event. It's going to be fantastic. And so on behalf of ASMAC, it's my pleasure to welcome all of our friends from around the world and to thank you for joining us today for this amazing webinar. I also want to thank and welcome our friends that are joining us from the ASA, the SCL, AWFC, Maestro Music, Nakusa, Muse, Gang, and the Los Angeles Inception Orchestra. So today, I'm really looking forward to the incredible information that's going to be shared with all of you. And we have the privilege of learning about some of the most exotic instruments throughout the world and become familiar with the sound of these instruments. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you're going to find that you now have many, many more unique sounds available to you for your future projects. So we're going to invite everyone. We're doing a little bit differently today. Everybody is welcome to keep their cameras on throughout today's presentation, but you do need to keep your mics muted. And when we do, obviously, if we call upon you to say something, then you'll turn on your microphone. But certainly feel free to keep your cameras on. Please do type your questions into the chat room and we will do our very best to answer all of them in the time that we have together. And before we begin, while all of us are here, Evita, would you please make sure your camera is on as well? Let me see if I can see your little face. Where are you? Wait a minute, you got me on a thing here. So let me, is she there? Okay, there she is. Okay, today is really special because Evita, who takes care of all of us, she's on our board, she's brilliant, and basically watches over everything technical for us. It's her birthday, so we need to wish her a very, very, very happy birthday. And needless to say, Evita, we really thank you for everything that you do to keep us running smoothly and for just being such an important person to ASMAC. So I think we should all wave and let her know that we love her. And there you are, because we only get to see her at the very end of the event when she says, good night, Evita. But now I wanted to catch you all while you're here so that we could celebrate you right together right now. So happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's see if we get a serenade here.
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead, Alfredo.
Yay. That's great. That's great. Thank you. So, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
So today we're celebrating Evita along with everything else that we're going to be doing today. So what was I going to say? We need to say hello to our featured guest. And Douglas Morton is the president and founder of Q Up Arts Sample Library. So I'm going to just go to Doug first and say, what do you have to talk to us about today?
Hello, thank you so much for having me on today. I will be talking about sampling. I've sampled a lot of indigenous instruments, including some of the instruments we just heard in Martine's video there. I always say use the real thing though, but samples are a great way to get ideas and spice up a score. So I'll be showing different libraries from my company Q Up Arts catalog in Contact. So stay tuned and
Yes.
thank you.
Oh, that's great. Good. I was going to say to everybody that's joining us, please, I usually say this somewhere during our webinars or at the end, but I'm saying it hopefully now at the beginning, that just note in the chat at the very bottom, there'll be 3 little dots, and any information that's put into the chat, if you click on those 3 dots, you'll be able to save it and you'll have the information or links or whatever gets posted for your reference when we're finished. So anyway, thanks, Doug. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, my very, very dear friend, wonderful harpist, Paraguayan harpist.
I think we lost Alfredo there for a minute.
We
Gail.
lost him?
Oh,
Oh.
no, he's back. He has returned.
Okay. Alfredo, don't you go away. You stay right there. Okay. I just want you to be able to, I want everybody to meet you just briefly for the moment. This is my very, very, very dear friend, Dr. Alfredo Rolando Ortiz, and he is like the premier Paraguayan harpist in the world. So what are you going to show us today?
Well, I'm going to be sharing with you a mini information of the history of our instrument, of the Paraguayan harp, and about my own unique crazy mixture of cultures and so on, which is what is represented through my composition. So there will be some interesting examples there.
Everybody's going to love what you're going to present. Everybody's going to love everybody's presentations today. So Glenn, thank you. I'm turning it over to you for a minute now.
Good. We're going to start with Martine Espino. And Martine is a respected authority on ancient Mexican instruments. He's also a world-class performer, master teaching artist, composer, and instrument maker. And he's also the first person I can think of who's ever played turtle shells at a ASMAC seminar. So we're off to a good start already. Recordings include The Old Ways, which is premiering on this Wednesday on Netflix. Current documentary on Netflix called Carlos Almaraz Playing with Fire. Chavez Ravine, which is coming soon to Netflix, and Back Road to the American Dream, premiering at Grauman Chinese Theater later this month. Martine, welcome. And let's check out a few instruments for now, and we'll spend more time with you later. But tell us about your journey. I found it interesting that a man who's obviously fascinated, intrigued by ancient Mexican instruments, you said you started your journey here in the United States.
Yes, well, I was born here in Los Angeles in the very indigenous area of Linwood, California. And when I was about 5 or 6, maybe it was 6. My dad was he was a really cool guy. He bought one of those boxes. It was like, I think it's called a UHF or a VHF box. It was a box that you can get like what are now like KCT and KMEX. And so he got that little box and he said, sit down and watch these shows from Mexico. And there was a commercial that I never forgot. And it was that big pole that goes up in the air with the wheel up there. And those guys climb, and you've probably seen them. They're called los voladores de Panpantla. And they jump off, and they're bungeed. And the wheel goes round and round, and these guys are flying. They're like this. They're just basically going like this as their bungee goes down to the ground. So they're floating in the air. In the middle of the top, 75 feet up, is a guy standing on a little piece of wood playing this little tiny flute and a drum like this one. So this is what I saw when I was a little guy, you know. Of course, the drums are real tiny though. Going round and round and round while these guys are flying, and I never forgot that. And so now here I am. I'm building them, you know, and that's the trip I took. You know, and I always wanted to go. I always seemed to want to go left field. I went right field and did. I'm a guitarist, electric guitar and classical and oud and lute and charango and all those things like that. But this became another thing, totally different. I love playing the guitar. As people go, oh, how fast you play, how nice that sounds. But for some weird reason, all I got to do is get one of these and do this. 3 notes. And there'll people going, wow, what was that? They don't say that when they play the guitar, you know. I thought something's going on, and that led me eventually now studying neuroscience, why certain tones do things and it helps me direct my music a lot better, knowing what I know what I'm doing already, but to read about it, go, oh my God. Yeah, we can talk about all that later, but that's where I come from.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more. It's your time to shine here.
Well,
what should we know about these instruments that you possess?
Well, you're ahead of me.
Okay, excuse me.
It's okay. I have a little list of things I'm going to talk about, and
Okay.
but I could bring it up now. This is funny. I sat down one day and started writing something for my website. And if you look at my website, there's a menu at the top, right? At the very bottom of the menu, it says composer and session recording artist or something like that. You click on it, and this thing opens up. And I was writing stream of consciousness because of my high school teacher, and I was thinking, this is what I feel, this is what I hear. Oh yeah, I should put that down. And I went back and read it, and I go, oh my God, I have some really strange hearing. This acceptance of these instruments for me. I didn't listen to them as out of tune or microtonal or different keys. I didn't know that when I was a kid. Something about the sound drew me, and I always liked simple things like or and I wondered, what are those things? How can I make it short? If you get a chance to read this little article, it's a wonderful article because it tells you how I think. I think like a musician. You know, Martine, can you improvise? Sure, no problem. Can you read this? Yeah, I read, but let me look at it. That's another subject though, because I don't read a lot playing these things, but I do read, and the other one is being attracted to sound for sound's sake. It started with 1 million years BC. Remember that movie with Raquel Welch?
Yes.
And I remember it mostly because of in the middle of the fight scene, there are these, you could hear, I remember this, I could hear it right now in my head. These rocks are going, ta, ta, shh, ta, ta, shh, and it was out of time. That's all I remember. I haven't heard it recently, but I remember it not being in time, and it was rocks and some sort of rattles. And it didn't sound like maracas. It was some kind of seed pods or something. And that started me on things. And I was really into science fiction because my brother would always sit me down. And turns out that it was my mom that was into all these things. So sit down and watch Outer Limits, mijo. You know. And I used to watch those black and white ones with the theremins and all these things. So that led me to be able to hear sounds like those weird theremin sounds, right? So in other words, that opened me up at age 5, 6, 7 to hearing these sounds. So later on in the 70s and 60s, when I heard Jimi Hendrix, it was nothing big to hear him doing feedback. And hey, this is really cool, you know, because I saw Forbidden Planet, you know. And I'm sure most of you, I'm preaching to the choir, right? Yeah. You know what the first electronic sound, and they had a whole studio full of gear. And so when I heard this one, I thought, hey, no big deal, check it out. Tone clusters. You can't play a melody on this that we know of. I mean, that I have. It's a triple ocarina. It's a tube ocarina. And so when I found this one later on, I love this one. you try to do a tone cluster like that on the piano, and it sounds like, no offense to piano, but that equal tempered tuning, you cannot do that when you got a microtonal instrument. I don't even know. I can't even hear the intervals. Check it out again. In person, I can hear it going that fourth harmonic above, and you might experience on this electronic medium. Usually, you don't. You experience it real heavily live. A lot of these instruments emit a lot of overtones that are just crazy, especially the higher pitched ones. Let me play this a little bit. This wasn't what I was going to talk about, but let me play for it. I'm going to get far away from the mic, and it's still going to razz your brain. Crazy harmonic. Did you hear that real low one?
Yes.
So I'm glad it's being transmitted. So I don't know how else to answer your question, but yeah, that's I hear it for sound, and it's taken me to a different place. It actually had effects on me. I've always meditated since I was 11, so I've always kept a really good demeanor about everything, and and it's opened my mind to a lot of sound, and I'm not afraid. So if you go, Martine, can you do that? Yeah, I'd done that a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically it. All the way down to noise. I make sure that I make a lot of my instruments. I make really good rain sticks. Unless it sounds like water. Different types of material are inside. Let me play you a little sound piece, okay? Instead of a melodic thing, okay? Here we
Absolutely. Let me say, while you're getting your instrument up, Jeff Kellum has already put a whole herd of Martine's websites, web addresses up on the chat window. Jeff, thank you. And so they're up already, Martine.
Thank you. Have you heard? Okay, great. Thank you. Like the buffalo. Here we go.
Amazing, Martine.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
So
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
incredible seems to be the word of the chat. A lot of people saying that roar just woke my dog up.
Yeah, I get a lot of funny things. I did a concert. I've done many concerts where I just really watched this one time, right? So I filmed the performance, and you see the stage really huge, and you see this one little guy up there, me, and then I did the Jaguar, and I saw people in the audience going like this, going.
Mhm.
They were looking around for. Well, I'm going to bring a 400-pound Jaguar to a show. And I learned how to do that voice because a lady came over and said, "Yeah, I could do this Jaguar voice really cool. It's an instrument that I say I made it up, but I mean somebody else must have done it. You know how that is. Somebody must have done something a long time ago." There's other variations of it. There's a wind instrument like the one I was playing made of clay, that if you form the mouthpiece right, it will growl like a Jaguar. This doesn't do it as well, but I'll give you an idea. See, some of them will actually growl more, but this one, like this one, makes more wind. And this one sounds like somebody screaming in a way. Don't buy into that's the death whistle. They had death whistles, It's like, okay, is there a death guitar? Right? Because you could, like I tell everybody,
Yeah.
you have to one of my friends coined that phrase, and it went out of control, because what he did is he made a big wind whistle, or a hecat. A hecat is a Nahuatl language, the Aztec language, that basically means wind or solar wind. And I've always called them a hecat, or wind whistles, because depending on how you play it and how you blow it, and your intention, excuse me, there's actually a thing called intention. I get sarcastic about it, and not everything's a death thing, But I remember my friend, he coined that word, and because he had made one to make it sound like somebody screaming. I remember the first time I ever heard it. It was like 40 years ago. I'm sitting in my friend Javier's living room, and he goes, "Close your eyes and relax, Martin. I want you to listen to something that's really relaxing." And he had one of these big Tarahumara frame drums that was about this big behind me. And so he gets this big giant whistle and hits the drum really hard at the same time. And the vibration, you feel it in your chest when you play a drum that big, and you hear that thing, oh my God, scared the wits out of me. And he just was over there laughing. But that's, it's like this, our instruments in ancient times aren't just, it's a death whistle. You play it with the intention. I use these in meditations, and no one ever says, "Hey, isn't that a death whistle, Martine?" So it's that. Yeah, I could jack about that. I have a lot of pet peeves about things just from hearing things I've heard. Aren't your ancestors bloody and violent? Let me ask you where you're from. I learned a lot of things, and by accident I became a historian because of the strange questions. I just wanted to play these things because I thought they were cool because of the way I hear. I like rocks slapping. I like water splashing. I like the sound of wind and the rain, and later on in with the neuroscience thing, discovering that how come I would play a concert. I have a program called Ancient Mexico, and I would play all these different regions, right? All happy music and sing, and everybody would be learning native languages with me, singing along, having a good time, being real upbeat. Then I'd do the rainforest thing. I would do this live, only I would pass out like 20 rain sticks, and I also passed out, I don't know if they're here. Oh, here they are. About 20 rain sticks, and I would pass out about 20 seashells, and I go. And depending on how you close the aperture, you can get low. Voodoo child. And so I'd have frogs, and I had rain, and I would do all the whistles live. And after that piece was over, I'd say thank you very much, and the audience would be like this. Kids and adults would be like. I go, man, I was like insulted. I thought, and then I found out later on. I don't know if you guys know this, but they put a microphone in the amniotic fluid, and the baby hears the bloodstream of the mother, and it sounds like this. Which is why we go. Let's go to the ocean and hear the sounds. I love the sound of the monks in Asia have written about, listen to the rustling of the bamboo leaves. That's white noise. And white noise basically cancels other sounds. You know all this stuff, you guys. And so that's one of the things we go back into a primal memory. There's so much that sound controls us. It's almost like saying, and this is fun because I do a lot of educational things. I'll go into schools and tell people, my third graders go, did you know that sound controls you? You think you control yourself, but you don't. You go home and you go, I had a hard day. I think I'll put some quiet music on and relax. What you're really saying is, I'm going to put some quiet music and some quiet sounds and let it control me and put me to sleep. And you release yourself and you fall asleep. Right now, they have noise generators, right? I didn't have that when my daughter was little. Just put her to sleep and that was it. Keep crying, go sleep. So yeah, all those things like that mix in. I want to talk about.
Well, Martine, let me stop you right there for a second. If it's okay with you, we're going to go on to Gail and Alfredo. We're going to talk to us for a while, and then we'll come back and we'll have a big space at the end for you to.
Can we maybe address Ryan's question real quick?
Yeah. I didn't know you were going to speak like this.
Ryan's question was, speaking of intention regarding cultural appropriation, what should we keep in mind if we wanted to incorporate these instruments into our compositions?
Wow, that's a long conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I that's exactly when I saw the question. I went, oh, there's an hour.
So maybe we address that later, because I know there is another question that I thought that maybe we should just.
Real quick, what happened to me with the old ways? They basically said to me in a conversation off the phone. On the phone, they go, we're not of your culture, Martine. That's why we're asking you to come in and put, what you know about this, how these sounds were used or how we think they were used. Mm-hmm. And that's what I helped them with. I told them high pitches noise and low pitches do certain things, and they incorporated it that way. The composer actually got his keyboard and detuned it so the orchestra could play with my instruments. That was cool. So I think that's one way, is talking to somebody that plays it or knows what they're doing. And there's not a lot. There's a lot of people that play, because this is an instrument. It's an easy instrument. Stick in kitty's mouth, press the kitty, and the sound will come out. So yeah.
Well put.
Okay, but there is another question here that came up earlier, and I thought I'd just address it. Susan asked, she says, as a professional horn player who played in Mexico for many years, I need to know about the holes in your shell instrument. I've never seen them before. Is this a folkloric tradition or more modern?
Everything's ancient. Number one, you can't play like this on a conch shell because it's not a conch shell. It's a clay ocarina made to look like a conch shell.
Wow.
So it doesn't look too much different than my conch shell. It's styled after the Yucatan Peninsula one. So it's a spherical object with an ocarina. So they're pretty cool answer, huh?
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so is it my turn now?
Well, I've got, let's see, our next guest I have some dialogue here. Our next guest has a gig later, so we better get started with him so he can join all his friends on the LA freeways. Let's turn it back over to Gail and the harp department. Gail.
There you go, the harp department. Yes, yes. So everyone, all I can say is, person that I'm going to be so happy to introduce to all of you is a very dear friend of mine. And when I reached out to him a couple of weeks ago, seeing if he'd be available to be with us today, and he said yes, because he works all the time. I mean, I was overjoyed. I feel like I've got a little frog in my throat. Sorry, delete that. Okay. Anyway, so my dear friend Alfredo Ortiz he is truly the master of the Paraguayan harp. And we're going to have a video that we're going to play that you'll watch. It's called Milonga para Amar by Alfredo Rolando. I said it wrong. I know I said it wrong. Okay.
Remember the A-E-I-O Spanish.
No, I can't do that. You're gonna do it. Alfredo, you're gonna do it. Okay. So but meanwhile, we're gonna hear this piece that you've composed, right?
It's dedicated to my wife. Yes. It's
To your beautiful wife.
Milonga para amar, milonga for loving, for
Okay.
my wife, Luz Maria.
Okay. All the titles, you guys have to say them because I can't do it. I studied Latin for 3 years and a little bit of Greek, but I can't do it. Anyway, so what I was going to say is that what Alfredo brings through his fingers and his heart and his mind and his soul musically, he's just an extraordinary human being. And I can't wait for you all to get to know him and hear more about him and his music. And maybe he'll mention that his wife is a great jeweler, but this is really about Alfredo. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, Alfredo. I'm just so proud to have you here. And thank you for introducing me to the Paraguayan harp. I have my harp because of Alfredo. He taught me how to play it, and I've used it on many films. So what can I tell you? It's just a phenomenal instrument. It's your turn.
And
Well-
first a video, though. Here we go.
Enjoy.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's just so wonderful. I'm so proud to have you here. So Now, everyone, please, please let me introduce my great friend, composer, author, educator, Dr. Alfredo Rolando Ortiz.
Thank you, Gail.
There you go.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm going to try to squeeze as much as possible a few facts that will clarify what I do with my life around this instrument. First of all, I was born in that island that looks like a crocodile, which is Cuba. And when I was 11, I moved to Venezuela going by ship. Up to then, my experience with harp was the occasional seeing pedal harp, classical harp, on movies or television. And I arrived in Venezuela, and going up by car to the capital city, somebody turned on the radio in the car, and I heard this beautiful music, which I couldn't figure it out what it was. Of course, we're talking about 1958. 2 days later, on a small black and white TV screen, there was a noon show, and they started playing the same music, and that was when I realized it was played with a type of harp different from what I have seen before. Soon I realized that the official national dance of Venezuela is harp music. Something that people is not aware of. The land of the harp as a folk instrument is Latin America more than any place in the world. The official national dances of Venezuela, Chile, and Paraguay are harp music. La Bamba is harp music from the 1700s and is the symbol of the state of Veracruz in Mexico. Now, where did we get the harps? Of course, from the Spanish conquistadores. When they were coming, they were bringing their instruments. The harp was coming. And even in the 1500s, in some of the expeditions that were coming, they mentioned, for example, Martine Niño was a harpist in the 1500s arriving to Latin America, to what is today Latin America. So eventually, with the religious people arriving, they were using music to try to attract the local indigenous population. And some of the instruments they were using were brought from Spain, but they were also locally made. They started using local woods. They taught them how to make instruments, etc., etc. So that harp that came to us from Spain was a single row of strings tuned diatonically, one key. Even though Spain had harps with 2 rows of strings with the occidentals and so on, where they could do chromatic music, I have never found any mention of one of those harps in the Latin American countries. Now, my harp, which I'm going to show you in a moment here, part of it, you saw it in the program, in the video. This is the official national instrument of Paraguay. In Paraguay, there is the official national day of the Paraguayan Harp in commemoration of the passing of a famous harpist in the first half of 20th century, Felix Perez Cardoso. His small town where he was born, after he passed away, they decided to change names. So there's a little town in Paraguay named after a harpist. I'm saying this just to bring to you the reality of the importance of this instrument. About 6 years ago, they had a concert in Paraguay with 420 harps playing together. It's impossible any other place in the world to do something like that. Only in Paraguay you could achieve that. Wow. So that's the #1 country of the harp in consideration to the population. So it's very common there. You say you play the harp, and people pretty much will say, "Well, yeah, so what?" Because they always have a cousin or a neighbor or somebody that plays the harp, and it's very common. In Venezuela, not so much, but it's a very important part of the culture, and Venezuelans love the harp music. In Colombia, in the plains of Colombia, you have the same type of harp style, and in construction. If you were to see next to each other the instruments, the harps in Latin America, of course, through the centuries, beginning with those Spanish instruments, they started making changes, modifications, a little bit at a time. So now there are quite a variety of harps. Mexico itself has at least 5 or maybe more varieties of harps that are popular in the country. The most popular one, of course, is the one from Veracruz. And then in the mid part of 20th century, something happened very special. All harps used to be that when you look at this part, which is what we call the They have different names for this
The
part.
neck.
But this is where the tuning pins are, and most harps, including the classical pedal harp, you would see the pins coming on this side, and it's visible here where the strings are tied. Not on the Paraguayan harp. They came up with this idea of having this piece be double. You can see there. Look at the tuning pins, and then they don't come to the other side. Actually, the strings are tied in holes here in the middle, and you have to kind of catch the strings, and the strings come from the center. So this is, if you look at my harp, if you were to look at it this way, you can see it's perfectly symmetrical. All other harps, like in the pedal harp, this column is slightly slanted to one side. It has a little angle, and you would see the strings on one side. The strings are not perfectly in the center. On the Paraguayan harp, they are perfectly in the center. One of the things that happened there was that because of the design, all left-handed people played reversing. Everybody would use the harp in the other shoulder and reverse the rolls of the hands easily, something which, because of the mechanical devices and things of other harps, is not easy to do unless it's specially made, maybe the instrument for the person. But now, the traditional Latin American harps remain diatonic. Some of the virtuoso harpists centuries ago in Spain were described as achieving accidentals by pressing, for example, this middle C. In theory, it's not a middle C. I'll explain you about that. I would press with my finger here in between strings. I push the string to shorten it a little bit to get an accidental. Sometimes they do it up above with something. Sometimes they even have like a little ring or something that has a protrusion, and they will push to obtain that. But in modern times, they started manufacturing mass quantities of sharpening levers, mechanical things that Celtic harps nowadays have that. So on this side, you would see the pin coming through, and between the pin and the end here, you would see the mechanical device designed to shorten the string half step. Of course, the pedal harp has the double mechanism with you can have three different notes, the flat, the natural, and the sharp on each note. We're stuck to one. My career has been around the traditional, so I never use that. I have a pedal harp and I have harps with levers, but it's not the instrument that was associated with my career. Now, born in Cuba, go to Venezuela. My first teacher was a 13-year-old friend when I was 15. It was a school friend. He played at school in a Christmas thing, and I asked him to teach me. Now, this is December of 1961. I told my parents that day, can you buy me a harp? And they brought me down to reality. We were in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, a family of 5, with 10 Cuban refugees sleeping on the floor. So, of course, there was no way they could afford a harp. I felt very sad. Incredibly, there was a Venezuelan visiting, heard a conversation. He said, I have a harp at home. I was supposed to learn when I was a kid. I never did, but I have the harp. He let me borrow his harp. That's how I began. A borrowed harp, a 13-year-old as a teacher. A few months later, I met a man from Paraguay who was a professional harpist living in Caracas. I cannot extend in the details how I met him, but it was a very incredible set of circumstances. And this man proceeded to teach me from kind of mid-1962 until December of 63, and he refused to accept ever a penny from my family because he knew the situation. So at the end of 1963, I wanted to go to medical school, moved to Colombia, and in Colombia, I was playing for fun. A few weeks after arrival, I was already in medical school. Somebody heard my music. They wanted me to play at a wedding. I had no clue how to do that thing about a party. He offered me money, and of course I said yes. So I went there, played, and in my first job ever, one of the guests asked me for my records, which of course I've made none.
Right.
He gave me the business card, and he was the top executive of the largest recording company in the country, and I was signing my first recording contract the following week after my first job ever. Talk about being at the right place, right time. This is me as an example. Eventually, 27 albums, a gold record in Colombia. Then I put myself through medical school playing the harp. At 17, I wrote a letter to my parents as soon as I was playing at these events and so on. I said, don't send me any more money. I know you have been making this big effort, but I think I can manage by myself. So that's how I put myself through medical school. I graduated in 1970 as a medical doctor. In 75, I came as a medical doctor in the United States. I was already involved in music therapy studies. I was one of the pioneers in music therapy in Colombia. And here I wanted to study more music therapy. I became very involved with the American Harp Society. And suddenly in 1976, I had the incredible opportunity, invited by Suzanne McDonald, who is a very beloved, incredible harpist, pedal harpist, recognized worldwide. And
Right.
she invited me to play and lecture about our harps at the American Harp Society conference. It was the first time ever a non-performer of the classical harp was invited to such an event. And I shared with them about our instruments, a little bit of the history. Then I was very frustrated because the only book available that I saw that was really like very extensive about the harp was a great book of many hundreds of pages, but it was only like a little section in one page mentioning the harps of Latin America. So I tried to collect information, and our music is played by ear. We don't read notes to play our instruments. It's a strictly look and do imitation. That's the way I was taught. So I made an effort. I learned notography myself. I couldn't afford a notographer, so I actually wrote by hand my very first book, and I wrote a little history with the information I could have. And little did I dream that that book, the first printing was like 2,000 books, and people were asking me, are you sure you want to do this thing? Well, it's already in the 4th edition, I don't know which printing, and it opened the door to many more books after that. And I was writing some of the traditional music from Paraguay and from Venezuela, but I was also a composer since very early. I loved to compose. So I started putting my music there. And the first time I went to Paraguay, I was already performing concerts there, including their music and my composition. That was in 1972. So it's a lot of things have changed. And at the time, they didn't have the sharpings at all. There is a friend of mine, Mariano Gonzalez, a wonderful Paraguayan harpist who is actually currently performing in Las Vegas. And he was the very first Paraguayan harpist that started using the sharpened levers on a Paraguayan harp, making modification to the instrument and so on. And now a lot of people do that. But still the most common form of harp throughout Latin America, the one that most people can afford, is the simple diatonic instrument. The part that was fascinating to me was our rhythms, these unique syncopations with the subtle variation from country to country and region to region. And then I can't help but being a Cuban born who used to live in Venezuela, that went to Colombia, that plays the harp from Paraguay, and I've been exposed to all of that. So that is represented when I compose. And the reality of the folk harp, some people are very traditional. You go to the countryside, maybe in very remote areas without much communication outside. They may be playing only their traditional music in one unique style. But the reality is with the media nowadays and the television, etc., and with the internet now, the influences has been tremendous, and everybody's imitating the other, and the techniques that used to be only typical to Paraguayan harp, now you see them, even people playing Celtic harps are introducing those techniques to the repertoire and to their techniques. So it's impossible to keep them separate. Music has always been changing, and the same thing is happening, I would say, pushed to an extreme because of the current media, the accessibility we have to share and see all of these people. So the first piece that you saw is not in a Paraguayan style. The milonga is a music style from Argentina and Uruguay, but the beat is this, which is, of course, the one we associate with the habanera. So you have that accompaniment pattern was so influential, and many music styles have that. In the case of Paraguay, the most unique thing is the 3-against-2 in the music. So the most common Paraguayan music will be like this. One piece I composed to my daughter, You find that's very important characteristic. But sometimes some of the fast techniques they use is like this. Actually, I'm playing quadruplets there. I'm playing 8 against 3. Which, thank God, I do by ear. I don't have to worry about trying to look at it and try to figure out how to count it. But it's a very common element. It's interesting how the music styles are so different, and one of the very peculiar characteristics is contrasting the Venezuelan style and the Paraguayan. The Paraguayan music will have a phrase, then the next phrase is very similar or identical. For example, so it's like the same pattern. In the case of Venezuela, it's the most complex of all the Latin American harp styles. The music is very syncopated, and part of the tradition is that you play a phrase on the harp, and next time that phrase comes up, you're changing the location of the syncopations. If you do it identical, then people right away say, that sounds like a Paraguayan playing it, because the Paraguayans would tend to play the Venezuelan music, and if they are not really very much into it, they will tend to play things identical. One example is, did you notice that? So the phrases really change. And this is part of the very important element in the music from Venezuela. It's very, maybe if I can ask, you have I know it's a little bit noisy at the beginning, but maybe we can play a little bit of the Venezolana. This piece I composed for 5 pedal harps. In this case, there are 10 pedal harpists from Italy performing at the UNESCO building in Paris. And let's look a little bit about that.
That's wonderful. Oh my goodness gracious. I was going to just say to you, Alfredo, all those kids were playing the music I'm playing the piece without your piece without music, playing from memory, which was wonderful.
Yes, the pedal harp is I have noticed that, but some of the music, for example, the Chicago Harp Quartet, when they play with their iPads nowadays. My composition,
Oh,
they
okay.
play.
Yeah, right, of course.
But in this case, most people have memorized. They love memorizing, which is so important. Also, one thing that I did with this piece, for example, a very common thing in Venezuelan music, an ostinato like that. And you hear that there, and then you notice tan 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 ta 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 ta, the way the melody goes. In Paraguay, you wouldn't find tan ta 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 ta. It would be always ta tan ta tan ta tan ta. It would be marching along. So this syncopation of the Venezuelan music is very, very, very different style. One thing that happened was the construction of the instrument has been dramatically changing super fast. Suddenly, the traditional look of a harp from Veracruz from just about 30 years ago, now it's much closer to the look of a Paraguayan harp. The Paraguayan harp was the one that more than any other style developed very quickly, and they got very sophisticated, many makers competing, so the quality of the instrument began increasing dramatically. So a lot of people started playing Paraguayan harps in other countries. And of course that influenced the local makers. And even though they still remain quite unique, the Venezuelan has remained very much intact, the proportions and so on. But in the case of Veracruz, Mexico, a lot of the characteristic of the current construction has very, very, very much been influenced by the Paraguayan harp construction. In Chile, essentially, they play Paraguayan harps. It's identical. They are making them identical. They used to be different a little bit, maybe, but it's identical to the Paraguayan harp. By the way, before I don't want to forget to mention, my website is alfredoharp.com. Easy to find.
Yes.
Somebody mentioned about my wife jewelry. Yes, harpjewelry.com.
That's right. What's interesting, because my Paraguayan harp looks just like yours, because you got it for me.
Yes.
And I've had it for decades. And what's interesting is, and I was just mentioning, we were talking about this before we went on air today, that the strings, they never break. Compared to our pedal harps, I've never had a broken string in my harp. I don't even know how to change my Paraguayan harp string.
Yes, and it's. I was going to say I'm so lazy that sometimes when the strings sound really bad, instead of changing the strings, I change harp. Instead of worrying about the stabilization of the new strings, I don't recommend that, but that's what I do. When an instrument, what happens is we're talking about, you are lucky because this was like the great master maker of Paraguayan harp, in my opinion. Unfortunately, he never taught anybody else. It was a one-man operation, no helpers, nothing. He did everything except the varnish. That's the only thing he did not do was the final varnish of the instrument. Lino Ruiz Diaz was his name. I lost track of him years ago when he moved away from Buenos Aires, closed his shop, and moved far away to live near his daughter. My understanding is he has passed away since, unfortunately. But Paraguayan harps are made in many countries now. There are a lot of people still making it in Paraguay. There are many makers. And in the Celtic harp world and the pedal harp world, I'm very happy to say that now I see people playing my compositions. If you go to YouTube and you just use my last name, Ortiz, and the word harp, there are hundreds of videos of people playing my compositions. Some of them are in Paraguayan style, like, for example, the Chicago Harp Quartet have performed my Danza de Luzma dedicated to my daughter. There is a version for several harps. A lot of people play that. And actually, 11 of my compositions are listed in the harp syllabus of the Associated Board of Royal Schools of Music, which pretty much gives the teachers, harp teachers around the world, the option of using my music to prove that you can pass grades. And that's an incredible honor. Somebody thought as a joke, somebody said, maybe they thought you were dead because you have more compositions listed than any other composer in that syllabus. And my harp music is required in over 150 countries in conservatories.
That's wonderful. And the technique that you're using for playing your instrument, the strings are closer together than they are on a pedal harp.
Yes.
And they're more flexible in the way that you
Yes.
can press them. But this technique is different from what we use on a
Correct.
country harp, where we would keep our nails short and use the pads of our fingers and calluses. And then, of course, if an effect is needed, we need to use our nails, and we hook our nails onto the whatever's there,
Right.
onto the strings. But you have longer nails.
Yes and no. This is something very interesting.
When you're doing the
Actually, the trino is done without fingernails also. One thing that is important to mention is, remember, these are really folk instruments. One thing is the professional player in the city, the one that makes a living from playing the harp. Most people that I had as students all my life couldn't have long nails for one reason or another. And in Latin America, I remember seeing them. You go to the countryside in Paraguay, a lot of people playing the harp with fingertips. Same thing in the plains of Venezuela. You don't expect cowboys or people into agriculture where their fun instrument to play is a harp to have long nails. They just cannot afford to have long nails. I remember in Venezuela going to a remote place with my father many years back, and he was selling agricultural equipment, and we were invited for a barbecue. Here comes the guys on horses. And the owner of the hacienda comes and down, greets us and says, we need some music here. He went back in the house, comes out with his harp. So the owner of the place was playing the harp for us with fingertips.
wow.
And some of the famous harpists from Venezuela played only with fingertips. And an anecdote that may be fascinating to Gail, Ocean Ellis.
Oh yeah, I've seen, yes.
Well, Ocean Ellis, pedal harpist, was a royal harpist at some point also.
Right.
And Britain composed for him his famous pieces. He played with long nails in his right hand
Oh,
on the
really?
pedal harp, yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
He was the one I saw in 1975 at an event at the American Harp Society in Pasadena. And when I saw him with that, I said, why not? That's when I decided to buy my pedal harp, because I thought, maybe I can. But yes, of course, the tension level is much less on our instruments. But the Paraguayan harp has the highest tension level of the Latin American harps, still much less tension than the pedal harp or the Celtic harps.
Yes.
The Venezuelan harps, the strings are so loose that you cannot play in the middle. They play near the top so that the deflection of the string is not that much. But on the other hand, if you go and see people playing the Venezuelan harp or the one from Colombia, which is essentially a Venezuelan harp, when they do effects, they grab the strings, and on purpose, they grab them and make some abrupt noises and play at incredible speeds, which are not possible on a high tension instrument. It's just impossible to achieve those things. So yes, they are unique instruments, but there are special techniques. I have been teaching Latin American harp techniques for the pedal harp world and people that play other types of harps for decades. And there are thousands of harpists that have gone through my workshops at one point or another. And I have introduced a lot of the very unique techniques. Of course, that's harp things, so I wouldn't be sharing those here, but it's
Right,
not an interest to your general audience. But there's a lot of unique techniques. In some countries, they call them trucos, tricks, like things. Some people are very jealous. They don't want you to teach the others.
Oh.
I teach them all always.
Of course.
And so now I would like to share with you a piece with symphony. We have the video there. And this one is originally, I'm going to just demonstrate briefly. This is a piece I composed to friends in Santa Cruz, California, an area where I played many, many, many concerts through the years in the middle of the redwoods and in different marvelous locations there. And there was a North American Indian tribe called the Sayante. Unfortunately, they are all gone. There is no Sayantes anymore. I believe the last one passed away in the 1940s. And I composed a piece in Paraguayan style dedicated to my friends. And the beginning is like this. But I want you to see, I commissioned the orchestration of my South American Suite for Harp and Symphony Orchestra, which has 5 movements in different styles of Latin America. There is a movement called Venezolana, Colombiana, Ecuatoriana, Andina from the Andes, and Paraguaya. This is the final movement of my South American Suite, a performance I did with the Corona Symphony Orchestra a few years ago. I had the incredible opportunity of performing my suite at the World Harp Congress in the Czech Republic years ago. That was very scary, having hundreds of harpists as my audience. And it was an amazing opportunity. So enjoy this. Paraguaya is the name of this movement.
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh.
Can I speak?
No, I was going to say, Alfredo, you know how our concert harps, our pedal harps, they've been made so they're electric harps now.
Yes.
Have they done that with any of the Paraguayan or any of the?
Actually, my suite is conceived for an amplified harp, and even then, you know, there are times where it was. By the way, I apologize for the off sync. You could see that
That's okay.
For some reason on this, when the video started playing, it was like off sync, the movement and the actual playing, the sound. But at least you could hear the music, and it had the typical rhythmic character of the Paraguayan music with the 3 against the 2, very strong throughout. This situation with the harp, like I said, I composed this intentionally to be amplified. And a lot of people is doing that. I mean, nowadays it's very rarely to see anymore, like even the Concierto de Aranjuez on the original guitar version, you rarely see them without amplification to try it, especially in big halls, to be able to carry the sound.
Right. Well, so I mean, like with the pedal harps, when they make the electric harps, every string underneath the soundboard there has amplification on it. So as opposed to putting on pickups onto the soundboard. So that's what I was wondering, whether or not they're actually.
The Paraguayan harp has a very strong volume.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yes.
And the soundboard vibrates so strongly. I actually have an internal contact pickup. That's
Right.
what I use
Yeah.
to amplify. It's not individual strings. But I do have an electro Paraguayan harp, marvelous harp made by Camac
You're
and
right.
Frank, who are makers of pedal harps.
Yes.
And they have made a different kind of electronic harps. They made a model, and mine has a unique characteristics designed specifically for me. I should have had that here right next to me to show you. Maybe my wife can bring it. Maybe my wife can give me a hand and bring it nearby, and I'll show you. And that harp has no body, so it's only electric, like the equivalent of an electric guitar. You need to plug it if you want to hear it.
Yes.
And that one has a full set of sharpened levers. I have used it for a few things. Let me show it to you 1 second. I'm going to remove my microphone briefly here. Just
Okay. And then, well, when you come back, I don't know if you can hear me. When you come back, one of our guests was asking if this last piece was in 6/8. Oh, by the way, the Paraguayan harp does not stand on its own. You have to lean it against a chair. So I just thought I'd mention that.
now take a look at this harp.
Yeah.
Look at this. There is no box. And by the way, those I call them the wings. That what you see on the sides.
Yeah.
Only mine has that. They made it exclusively for me because I wanted actually to have. Normally, it's just like the very narrow center section, but I wanted to be able to do some of our techniques where I need support on the side for my forearm to
Right.
achieve some of the things that are traditional in our music. So they designed this, what I call the wings, these pieces on the side, so that it feels more like the regular harp, and you
Yeah.
can see the beautiful set of sharpened levers. It's a gorgeous instrument.
It's beautiful. It looks like it's burgundy in color.
It is. It's a beautiful red burgundy. Yes.
Right. Camac harps are wonderful.
Wines.
Glenn is coming on right now. I see that he's probably got some questions.
Yeah, Brent Sawyer asked, I had to drop out for a few minutes. Did Alfredo talk about the tuning and temperament of the strings?
Well, like I was saying, it's a diatonic instrument. Sometimes they tune it in a minor key. So they will literally tune to minor. But most of the music tends to be in a major key. In Paraguay, the most common key is F. In the case of Venezuela, D. And the reason for that is because the national instrument in Venezuela is the cuatro, a small guitar family instrument. It looks like a ukulele. If you have seen a ukulele, it's identical to the cuatro. The cuatro is slightly bit larger and is something that practically every child in Venezuela knows how to play a few chords. And the easiest one is the D chord. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that the most popular key on the Venezuelan harp would be D. But of course, for singers and so on, they have to be literally retuning. So when I was going to play things, if I had to ever change keys, I would have to make sure to, after intermission, then I have to retune and try to stabilize, which is a nightmare because the strings don't stabilize immediately. So the sharpened levers have opened a tremendous amount of possibilities for all our folk traditional instruments. But again, sorry, I forgot to put this properly back.
That's okay.
But still, it's the traditional instrument diatonic without the lever still is the one that prevails in most situations.
Wonderful. Are you going to be able to stay with us for most of our event?
Let me see. I think so. I'll try. I'm looking at
Good.
the clock and I'm waiting for another call and so on. That hasn't happened yet. So maybe
Good.
I can continue. Yes, I would. I want to hear the rest.
Yeah, that would be great because I know that we have to get on to Doug, but I want to be
Yes.
able to come back to you. So, oh, Alfredo, you're just such a treasure to all of us that know you, and now hopefully the world.
So remember my website, alfredoharp.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and Jeff Kellum has put all your websites in
Everything's in the
chat
chat.
as well. And thank you for doing that again, Jeff. And let's move on to Doug. Thank you, Alfredo. It's wonderful.
My
Every
pleasure.
time
Don't
every
go
time I've
away.
experienced your music, it's
Here.
amazing. So, all right. So, Doug Morton is the president and founder of Q Up Art Sample Libraries. His sonic designs have been heard in hundreds of feature films, network television, and games. And I must say, Doug's been a long-time friend of mine, and I've got many of his CD sets in the place where I stash such things. Doug, good to see you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Tell us about Q Up Arts and your voices of sample libraries as well, please.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm very happy to be here with everyone. Thank you for coming. Martine, Alfredo, I really enjoyed that presentation. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You know, it was funny while I was watching you guys, and by the way, I'm coming up with my microphones. I'm going to record both of you guys. It's but no, it was reoccurring to me, as it has many times, that sampling has been I feel so grateful to sampling and sampling technology, because it's provided access to a world of instruments that we might never have even heard before. You know, it's really amazing. And different tunings. I mean, it seems endless. You know, like we're able to share instruments from, you know, in my case, the Navajo reservation, all the way to Turkish, you know, stuff recorded in Istanbul, Turkey. We have Aztec sounds. So I'm very thankful for sampling, just to provide the access so we can play all these wonderful sounds on keyboards. Can y'all hear this flute?
Yes.
Should be hearing a echo flute right now.
Yes.
Yeah, my specialty for about 40 years. Well, I'm older than I thought I was. I started sampling very early on in Santa Cruz with EMU systems, and I'm a keyboard player mainly. But currently, I'm doing I work for Guitar Center Corporate, the private brands division. We do Williams pianos. I do all the sampling for the digital pianos, Simmons drums, the electronic drum kits. I recorded a bunch of electric pianos, organs up in Topanga Canyon, and then we recorded a Fazioli 10-foot grand for the Allegro and the Symphony Grand series. So I've been with them since about 2014. Also work with Korg in Japan for the Kronos. I do UVI in France. We've licensed sounds to most of the big sample manufacturers. We started in hardware, so we were doing, you know, Roland 770, Akai S1000, X6000, all the EMU gear from E3X, you know, Emulator 2, E3, E4, SP1200. It goes on and on and on. So I started with hardware samplers. We used to transfer the sounds from Sound Designer 2 on an old Mac SE through RS422. It was cranking it by hand. The tools these days have gotten a lot slicker, you know, with Isotope and you know, there's a lot of companies making really great tools for creating sample libraries, but it still takes an awful lot of time. And then the other half of my job, of my career, is I compose music. I do the Monterey Bay Aquarium up north. I I do a Living Planet Aquarium in Salt Lake City. And I score the exhibits. So we'll do an exhibition on sharks or jellies, and I compose the music that you hear as you walk through the exhibits. It's really been a labor of love. And I also do live gigs there. We set up in front of one of the tanks or in the jellies gallery. I invite different people to play with me. And it's kind of like an orchestral ambient jam band. It's all improvised music. So that's been really great to get me out of the studio, because I spent an awful lot of time sitting in front of a screen, like I am today. This is much funner though. So yeah, very grateful for all the opportunities that I've had over the years. It's been incredible. Yeah, so just to flash forward, and then we'll get into some sounds. I started back in Santa Cruz at EMU Systems. When I started there, it was in a house full of hippies, and it was very casual. They were making big modular systems at that time. They went on to the Drumulator, the SP12. The Emulator 1 had been released when I came on. I did various jobs there. I worked in the test department. We burned in all the units. We tested them. We would sneak our own sequences into the demo sequencers that went out to the customers. If you have an old Emulator 2, you might see that we put little messages in there sometimes. We had a lot of fun. I spun out of there. We were making sounds for the Drumulator, a lot of drum sounds, and there was a lot of high-profile recording artists would come to the house. Like Peter Gabriel would come over, Christopher Franke, The Cure, it seemed like the English musicians really embraced sampling early on. So, Pink Floyd used our stuff. So Christopher Franke came over one day, and he bought every single sound we had for the Drumulator. And previous to that, there wasn't really any, no one was selling sampled sounds. The Emulator 2 sound library was basically, and the E1, there was a bunch of swap parties in LA where people would just trade sounds that they'd sampled. So it was the Wild West of sampling, and it was brand new to me. I was like 21 years old, so it blew my mind. I mean, it was kind of the golden era of the beginning of sampling. So I worked at EMU. We did a lot of NAMM demos. We did sound design. I worked in marketing with EMU, and then I moved on to Optical Media International, which was also in Santa Cruz. And OMI made CD-ROMs. We had a sound publishing division called Reflective Arts, and we did the first CD-ROMs for the Emulator 2. Then we went on to write the drivers and publish discs for Roland, Akai, Yamaha, and Sonic, pretty much every hardware sampler that existed. And all the while I was making sounds for all of these different instruments. Then in 1993, we left, OMI had moved over to Silicon Valley from Santa Cruz, and I kind of missed Santa Cruz. I missed the beach. So we did 5 years at OMI, and then I spun Q Up Arts out of OMI, and I brought all the sounds with me. I acquired the publishing for the sound library that we'd published at OMI. And the very first product that we did was a drum library called the Heavy Hitters Greatest Hits, and that had Jim Keltner, just a legendary session drummer, Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, and Alan White from Yes. And it was just single hits, recorded at A&M and Ocean Way. I worked with Reek Havoc on that library. Reek did all the recording of that stuff. And then I got a phone call, and here I'm going to accompany myself as I tell this part of the story, just for dramatic pause. I got a phone call from a recording artist called Spotted Eagle, and he asked, are you interested in publishing some Native American sounds? And my first response was, well, who would want, what would people do with those, But I was very intrigued. I didn't think anybody would buy it, but it seemed like a really good excuse to take a field trip to the deserts of Utah. And I wasn't really worried about the sales of the product. I just wanted to learn more about the culture. So we traveled out to Salt Lake City. We went to Moab, southeastern Utah with the Zion, Bryce Canyon. We actually did a couple of gigs out there in the desert, and I was blown away. I was completely blown away. I went to Four Corners Reservation, and I was very fortunate because I had hosts to bring me to these places and show me around. You can't just walk onto the res with a microphone and go, "Hey, can I record you guys?" They'll kick you off. So Harry James, one of the Navajo elders, took me down to the res. Spotted Eagle knew the Native American community in Salt Lake. So we started to bring people into the studio, and we would record them. Spotted Eagle played Native American flute. So this is him right here. I'm going to share my screen here for a sec, so I can show you the interfaces. I'm showing this material in Contact, which is Native Instruments, which is the predominant sampler in the world. This is the Contact GUI that we built. I'm playing it out of Logic right now. So we tried to bring all of the controls that you normally, that are beneath the hood, so to speak, in Contact. So right here you're seeing the where the samples are mapped to. Here, I'll enlarge this a little bit. Let me move this over here. So you can see on the keyboard right here I have just a drum loop. These are all time lock loops right here. So if I hit 2 notes, you get 2 samples. That's just me with my hands on my legs. I'm just going like this, doing a rhythm. And then each sample is mapped, like every key has a new sample of different motifs. So when Spotted Eagle, I call him Spot, everybody calls him Spot. I just had him play flute, just play for 10 minutes. And then I went back, I spent 2 years working on this library. So I went through and basically, you can see the waveform right here. So there's just a ton of just licks and loops and gestures. Some are short. So you can basically come up, you put a loop up here. Instant cue, this particular collection right here, this is from Vona 2. Voice of Native America, we nicknamed it Vona. So yeah, we just brought a whole bunch of different people into the studio from several different tribes, Navajo, Zuni, Ute, Shoshone, Bannock. I met some just wonderful people in the process. It was such a gift this opportunity was unbelievable. And again, not thinking about customers wanting it or caring about it, but for me, I'd been spending a lot of time by myself, so it was a game changer. And I ended up moving to Utah, to Park City. I lived in Salt Lake, and God, the rest is history. I'm down in San Clemente now. Yes, Glenn?
No, not me.
Oh, sorry. Thought I heard something.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is step through some different things, and just to speak to the tip of the cultural appropriation. Our goal was to treat this library with a lot of respect. We did not publish any sacred sounds or personal songs. So most of the vocal things that you hear are vocables. It's like us saying la la la. And again, these are just chunks that we recorded. They're big strings. Every single note has a new sample on it. Some are just yells and stuff like this. You know, I forgot how fun this stuff is, man. But you know, really took the project to heart and had such a good time and just meeting all of these people. And then and this was back in 1995. I think I recorded in 95. We published it in 97. It was on a CD-ROM. Glenn mentioned CDs, and you know, everybody says the CD is dead. I don't agree with that, but the CD-ROM sure is. But we used to, you know, you'd hook up a CD-ROM player to your hardware sampler, and that's how you would load in the sounds. And you know, it seemed futuristic at the time, and now it's, you know, it seems archaic. And so this particular library, by today's standards, is really, really small. And again, it's 25 years old, but it's under 400 megabytes. The last thing we published, California Keys, is 40 gigabytes. In the Contact sampler, you can have, the size doesn't matter. You can have as big as you want. The samples stream off of the hard drive. So this library has an awful lot of variety to it. It's under 400 megs. You're hearing everything in mono, but most of the samples are stereo. Here's a bunch more vocal stuff. And again, these are just a whole bunch of snippets that I cut up into little chunks so you could make your own thing happen. The GUI, you know, like I was saying, we brought everything that is under the hood in Contact up to the surface, so you don't have to. We want you to focus on making music, not on we don't need more programmers. We need more composers, right? We need more, like, play the instruments, man. So what we did with this, we have velocity to filter. So when you play softer, this works in conjunction with the cutoff filter. If you want something to go darker, as you play harder, the sound gets brighter. Here's just a classic ADSR. If you want things to ring out, you can change the attack. So basically, you can put a spread on things. You can pan it. There's a little echo module in here. We have Lexicon 300 impulses here, from small to long. They're just beautiful sounding reverbs. Here's the level of that right here. If you want to get really weird and mess things up, you can. If you want to get crazy, you can do that. We put a dry button which turns everything off if you felt like you went too far. One of my favorite patches in here, this is a horsehide drum. It was this massive 4-foot diameter drum made of horsehide. Typically 4 or 5 guys would sit around it with big mallets made of like sheepskin. They look like tree branches with sheepskin on it. And they would hit it, you know, basically as hard as they can. It's just a very heavy, big sound. So I approached this drum. Here, let me show you how it's mapped. And again, this interface allows you to darken it, brighten it, spread it out stereo-wise. Every single key has a new sample on it. And what I found was, look at how low end these are, was instead of hitting as hard as we could, I found that we put the mics really close. We had John Hardy mic preamps. We turned those up pretty loud. But the coolest stuff was, the most resonant was when you hit it really soft. So we hit it with fingertips, different, you know, chopsticks, mallets, everything we could find. But you end up with this. So you can play the keyboard like a drum. You can play anywhere on the keyboard right now. So, this is not mutually exclusive to Native American music. You could play, you know, or if you just want a really simple rhythm, you can just choose 2 notes. And again, this patch is only, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 meg total. It's just a tiny little patch, but it packs a pretty big wallop. We also had a Navajo girl come in with a belt. At the powwows, they wear these, they're called fancy dancers, and they have these very ornate headdresses and dresses on and stuff. And she came in with this really great, I should have brought the pictures of this, but if you contact me, I can certainly show you those. This is a bell dresser. She's dancing around, and we just put the mics in the room to record this. Again, if you want to really make it wild, you can put a bunch of reverb on it, a flanger on it. I don't know. So yeah, we try to give you a lot of control with the sounds. So here's another couple things. These are just a couple drum loops. You know, on the first volume, there wasn't a lot of loop stuff. It was more single hit motifs and stuff. I made this loop, and I just made it out of the samples. And I've heard this loop on TV more times than I can count. I remember sitting with my son watching this cartoon called, I think it was called Courage the Cowardly Dog. And they had a Native American scene where the dog was, I don't know, fighting an Indian or something. And they used that loop, and I've heard it over and over again. I'm always so tickled to just hear that people are using the sounds. These sounds have ended up in a lot of documentaries, TV shows, feature films. So I built some patches where you can have a loop going, and then immediately get something going on that sounds pretty good. So you don't have to be a keyboard player to use this stuff, although us keyboard players are really lucky because sampling lends itself to keyboardists very easily. There's a ton of flute motifs. Most of them are dry, but I did process some of them through Echo and the Lexicon 300, just so you have kind of an instant produced kind of sound. So yeah, the library really has a lot of variety to it. The flutes are labeled with what key it is. If it's a BPM loop, you know, we label everything like that. We did take some straight notes of the flutes, but it sounds more like a mellotron. And that's really what drove us to have the flute motifs and the melodies. And then, that's pretty much
Doug, we had one question pop up. And Susan Volmer asks, sorry for my ignorance, but what is the ownership status on samples? And I know everybody's a little different on this. I just, how does this work with you? Is they free to use without royalties? And
yes, they are. When you purchase a library from QUp or from most sample manufacturers, you pay one price, the initial buy of the download. You're buying a single user license. You don't have to pay mechanical royalties or sync royalties or anything on it. The only restriction that we ask people to honor is just don't use it in another sample library. Although the stuff is shown up all over, like, you know, as Carlos Santana said, if you're not hacked all over the world, you know, you're not worth your salt. So, you know, like, for me to litigate somebody in Russia is I don't have the time to chase anybody down. But you know, the sounds are out there, and we just focus on the good customers. You know, it's like people are going to pirate stuff, but that's cool. You know, have at it. You know,
I have seen certain sample creators also ask that you not take one of their samples, put it in a show, and call it a cue with your name on it. So,
that's reasonable. Yeah. You know, we encourage creativity. You know, we honor creativity and authenticity, and we try to give you bits and pieces so you can make something that is yours. You know, that's really important to me. You know. But, you know, it does happen, and, you know, we don't, you know, to each his own. You know, we're just trying to help out our fellow musicians with the access that I've been blessed with. I mean, it's you know, yeah. We're just happy it's stuff's getting used. You know.
One of my memories is coming to the NAMM show in Anaheim and coming over to see you guys first off. And it always used to strike me that we would be talking. I would say, "What's new? What do you got to show me?" So on and so forth. And you'd talk about 2 minutes for the instrument, and then 20 minutes about the people you met in Utah and the Navajo reservation.
Yeah.
Like that's always struck me, that not only were you making excellent samples through the mechanics of it all, but everything you were trying to do, you were doing as an act of love and inspiration.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, like we're a service company, and, me and my friends are trying to turn people on and help out. Sampling has been very kind to me. I've been very fortunate with the opportunities that I've had. And the people are the best part about music, right? It's like, look at how many people I never would have met you, Glenn, or Milton, or there's a lot of people. So I'm super thankful about the people part of it. Like composers, we spend so much time by ourselves, and when I started to play live again, and when I go out and do these field recording things, like it's a huge deal to me, just to connect with people. I mean, that's really what music is about, right? It's like connecting with other folks, and trying to help out. Yeah.
Well, as my mentor Spud Murphy used to say, he said, "I love meeting musicians because, first of all, they're a musician, but then they could be the world's leading expert on antique coins,
right?
Or something like that." He said, "There's always something going on in their heads that's positive and interesting."
Indeed.
Why don't you give us a quick tour through other sound libraries you've got right now?
Okay. When I was watching Martine's presentation, it's so cool to hear those. The instruments are unbelievable. Years ago, this was also in the 90s. This is another library called Voices of the Aztecs. And I heard the actual instruments. We have some of these instruments. They're pale in comparison to what Martine can do with them, but it's really some fun stuff. This library was done in Mexico by Ignacio Rodriguez Bach, and the instruments were found in an archaeological dig and sampled. And again, this is basically the same interface as the Voices of Native America material. Here, I'll show you the mapping of stuff. Turn on the wave editor. So those little whistles and the stuff that he was playing, those are integrated in some of these ambiances. This is a thing where you just hit a key and you get a produced kind of cue, if you will. Let's see. And these are fun if you're scoring something. You can lay this down as a bed and put some other stuff on top of it. These sounds have been really popular. And then there is some very playable stuff too. Check these out. Here's Voices of the Aztec low. It's a low drum. I think it's a Huehel drum. They're just big, beefy, low drums. And again, I think I mapped these out semi-chromatically. I mean, these days, like with deep sampling, there's products where people have, they'll have like 2,000 drum hits in there, and all kinds of velocity layers. And again, this collection was done in the 90s for hardware samplers. A lot of those hardware samplers maxed out at like first, like when I first started, the biggest load we could do, I think, was 2 megs, and it went to 8 megs and then 32. So we actually had the loop samples, which is kind of a lost art. There's very few people in the world can properly loop samples because we don't really need to. But so we're always trying to really trim stuff and just make it real tight so it would fit into the footprint of the RAM. See what else I got here. Then see, put this one away. That's Voices of the Aztecs. Let me see if there's anything else in here. Oh, this is a library that came to me. I did not record this material, but I just thought it was so cool and it fit with our ethos. Voice of Native America set me down a path of just looking for really unique things, and also cultural instruments. These days it's very difficult to find something that hasn't been sampled. Like everything's been done hundreds of times to varying degrees of quality. During the 80s and 90s, there was only 4 or 5 companies selling samples at all. Some of them are still around. Like Ilio does great work. Spectrasonics is awesome. East West is there. Big Fish. There was only 5 or 6 companies selling samples. Now there's literally hundreds. Yeah. But this the Turkish library, this was done in Istanbul. So it's very indigenous to Turkey, and these are just fun. They're just Turkish string loops. And I'm just holding one key. I'm not playing these. How fun are these, man? There's also a bunch of loops. Alaturks, like... up here it's got these cymbal things. That's just a little 1 meg patch. Sometimes we stretch the samples out of range just for, like someone might use it up here as a hi-hat. Who knows? So we try to cover the whole keyboard, all 88 notes, and put something there so you can have fun and make something happen.
So there's a general question, Doug,
Okay.
About getting the musicians paid on these things. How do you work that out? Flat fee up front, or I know it's hard to do a royalty kind of basis because it's hard to keep track of it once it leaves your hands. But
well, we've done both. We've hired people and negotiated a rate that is fair for them and fair for everybody. There's other instances where we pay royalties. It depends on the involvement of the artists and what they would like to have out of it. I also hire a lot of programmers because what the recording is the easiest part of all this. What takes so much time is just trimming and naming and mapping everything out. Building the GUIs. In some instances, we've outright bought libraries off people that have produced things. We're not a quantity company. Right. We're always looking for, when I say we, I mean I'm always looking for things that are very high quality that will last a long time. That you can use for 20 years. And we publish drummers like Steve Gadd, Tommy Lee, Alan White, these guys. So yeah, it's all over the map as far as what kind of deals that we do, but we always treat people fairly in every event.
Yeah. So yeah, and basically Jeff has put your website online already. Anything else?
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Anything else you want to wrap up with, Doug, before we head back to Martine?
I would just like to invite you to, I still do phone calls. I love to chat music and sampling. I just want to put it out there that if there's things that you think are missing, which is, hard to imagine in today's sampling landscape, I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to call me or email me. I'm just Doug@queuparts.com. And I would love to connect and hear what you're doing, you know. And thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
And my experience with Doug is if you've got a project you're excited about, if Doug likes it, he'll get as excited as you are about it. So
yes, it's all about inspiration, man.
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
keep inspired.
I also wanted to mention that on your website you have a lot of these samples that you can hear, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In stereo with all the reverb and stuff that we didn't get through Zoom.
Yeah.
So, great.
Good.
Awesome.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
it.
Martine, we're back to you. I'm sorry it took a little longer than we expected, but these seminars usually do. What else would you like to show us in your bag of tricks?
And you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, unmute. Oh. Well, thanks, Doug. That was great to see you. And
This is fascinating.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, everything was really, really beautiful. It's you don't see programs like this happening every day.
No.
Martine, I was wondering what you would do. You would how you would paint Alfredo's harp.
Oh, anything he wants, I'll put on it. I might even paint it when he's not looking. Say Martine was here. Orale.
So what else have you got to show us, Martine?
Well, I want to show you the 4 instruments. There's only 4
Okay.
instruments here. There's a lot of stuff here. And then real quick, some ideas of how to use them in film, but a lot of you guys know how to do that already. I'm real experienced in the miking things and getting things done, and yeah. Anyway, let me show them to you real quick, because there's only really one string instrument that comes from native times, from before Spanish or European arrival. Okay, and so there's no guitars, there's no charangos, there's none of that. There's this thing, the hunting bow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so let me show it to you real quick. And I wish I had a bigger. This is a tiny studio I have, and a lot of these things I have to make because I couldn't find them, you know, or you can't go to, you know, to Guitar Center and find or wherever. And so I got a gourd and I hollowed it out and I did it traditional style. You dig the hole and fill it with water and all, and a lot of things. I've been working with gourds for like 30, 40 years, and I'm gonna put him right here just to show you, okay? And this sits on top. That's basically a recreation of the one that's shown back in the 30s with Carl Lumholtz. And traditionally, they're played with 1 or 2 arrows, which I haven't really found the meaning, but I'm sure it has to do something with, you know, sustaining life, and the bow is used for something for staying, you know, like when I teach my school kids, I go, what's a bow for? It's for killing things. And I go, no, it's for staying alive, man. You want to eat. So if you take the arco, the bow off here, it's a real skinny harp. Can't hear it because it needs a resonator. So to make the sound resonate, and this is not the appropriate resonator because this one rings at a little, about 4 notes lower, but it still works. Of course, because I'm holding it, that's not the way you play it. It's supposed to sit on the floor with my foot on top.
Okay.
And then you bend over and you play it, and you get a really nice resonance off of it. Especially when the gourd, I'm going to have to get myself a bigger gourd to make this resonate where I want it. And I have some gourds that are like about this big around and about that tall.
You know, the thing that's very striking from the sounds you've been getting all day, and plus the way you talk about this, is just what a huge part of these instruments is nature.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting the natural sound out of it. You're using natural processes to make it.
Everything, even the way I do it, like you don't see some of the things I paint. I stopped using acrylic paints. I did this a long time ago. I now do natural paints. Like this rain stick, I make all the paints. This is red ochre, you know, chalk and carbon, and of course I varnished it for the heck of it, but I don't even varnish anymore. So real quick, I'm just gonna go real quick over percussion thing. So that's a string instrument and beautiful instrument. Percussion's the teponaztlis or the log drums. Teponaztli. It's hollow in the bottom, and that same shape is repeated on top. And this was made by a great maker in Mexico, Maximino Ibarra Losada, and he made these for me. He had put a big old giant Martine there. I said, "Don't want my name on there. Don't cortalo." So he cut it for me. He's really cute. He's like 85 or something. And so what he is, he's basically a sculptor. And because I found out when I got the instruments, the keys didn't work. So luckily I have been, examining the codices, the ancient books that show how they were cut.
Okay.
And there's about 3 different kinds of ways to cut it. So I cut it, keys work. Here you go. These sound really high because I have ones that are lower. I have another one this big, so there's a little one, this one, and then I have another one that's about from here to here, and I have another one way out here. So I have pretty much everything I have in families,
Okay.
And then there's the ones I make in bamboo. It's like if somebody wants me to do something, hey Martine, can you have one of those teponaztlis in the key of C? Sure, let me make it for you.
Yeah.
So the bamboo ones are a little more resonant, and again, like any drummer would know, different kinds of sticks make different kinds of sounds. So, a skinny stick, and I make all the sticks too. So these are the ones I make out of bamboo. You'll find these in Mexico too. Well, let's get a heavier stick. Hear the difference?
Yes.
Night and day. And then sometimes I'll get some of these sticks and I put the ayoyotes on there. So
Very cool.
anything to make a sound. And then of course there's the little ones. Well, this one was made for a customer, but then I
Kept it.
that's a long story. Anyway. she got the this was her instrument, and then something happened to it bad in the studio. See the big crack?
Yeah.
And so I made her a new one. So this was she wanted these designs on this. This is a butterfly from Michoacan. These are designs from Guatemala, and I took the butterfly design and put them on the keys. And so here's the little one. So these are called teponaztlis or log drums. And you see those ones that they ripped off of us, which is those square ones, all the multi keys in there. That's taken from that. But of course, log drums are all over the South Pacific and Africa. But these are as far as I know, there's no other ones that have keys that produce exact tone. So you saw the wood ones, you saw the bamboo ones. Wait till you see this. I can show you the drums. There's all kinds of drums. I got to show you this drum.
Okay.
First, here's a little one. You know what a little drum sounds like. But this is the bigger one.
Okay.
And of course, they have beautiful resonance. And again, same thing. Different sticks do different things. So I had to. I got some indigenous plastic and covered the seat so you wouldn't hear it, but you can get wonderful overtones. I use these in the meditations and things. What an incredible sound. And if you have better, these are ghetto mics. Okay, if you have a better mic than this, man, I've had some guys in the studios make these things sound incredible.
So what kind of hide are you using on that, Martine? Is that
It's I believe that's deer, because that one came from Chihuahua, and I don't know my animals too well, but from what I'm looking at, it's deer.
okay?
And I have like 4 or 5 of these things, so I put them up on big hangers and play all of them like that.
And the other question I have is it looks like, is it cured leather laces that you use to tie the heads on with?
I don't know how they do that. I just know they got a one. If you don't have to cut a long string. All you gotta do is just cut a piece of leather, and then you tie it and you put a nail at one end, and you come over here and you stretch it and let it dry.
Okay.
One way to do it, and then the other way is of course just to cut straight. A lot of these are real long pieces. I mean, they must be at least 15, 20 feet long or something like that. I don't know. Some of them are tied, and then you use that. You wet them, and then you just go through and sew it and tie it, and it dries. I gotta show you this.
Okay.
Okay, you ever been on the street and some guy pulls up next to you in a big truck and you hear, you go, damn, everything in the car is vibrating, right? Even my car,
Yeah.
And so this drum, when you hear it live, it does this acoustically. This is a gourd. I clean them out and you play them on top. I've been making these things. I've been working with gourds for 30 years, so I know I can go to a gourd farm and go, okay, this gourd's right. And basically, where'd you go? Well, you saw the big gourd. I had another gourd here that was going to be made into a water drum, but let me show you real quick. We'll take the tawito, the string instrument that's called tawito or gat. And it's actually the instrument from my heritage because my dad's people are from Durango and the people there are called the Tepehuanos. So not everyone's Aztec and Mayan. That's that whole thing. And so there's the resonator and the gourd on top. So what we do with the rounder ones, the ones that are a little more round, cut them in the middle, clean them out, and there you go. You have two resonators right here.
Okay.
So let me play it real quick. Traditional.
Sorry.
Uh-oh, somebody's on the phone. So traditional, when you play it, nothing happens. Not enough amplitude. There is a pitch there. I'm going to put it in water, okay? And it's a big bowl that's sitting like this, okay? So let me put it in there. Traditionally, they're not made that big. They're usually about much smaller, and the sticks are much smaller. These are corn husks. I have to make everything, okay? But check it out. Hopefully, it'll transmit good. So you heard what it sounds like out of water. Yeah. Put it in water. I wonder if I can get my screen to come over here.
Oh, wow.
There it is. Incredible instrument. And I have other gourds that are this big that get like low E's and low B's and stuff like that. And pretty crazy, huh? And you actually, when you're playing it, you feel this wave of sound. It's like feels like somebody's putting a pillow of sound in your face. And then, so those are some of the percussions. I'm trying to pick some of the unusual. We have a whole lot of really wacky stuff. Here's a small one, butterfly cocoon. I have another one where it's 200 of them, and they go on your legs from the ankles to the knees, from the ankles to the knees. We use them in our deer dances because my other side of my family, from my mama's side, are the Yaquis. We're from Sonora, and we do the deer dance. So we put these butterfly cocoons on the ankles all the way up to the knees, and of course you wear like a kilt, and you wear no shirt, and you wear the deer head on top. So totally different sound than a regular rattle. And then, of course, this is a ceremonial one from Yaqui. It's the Yaqui rattle. I got to get away from the mic. It's so freaking loud. I love these things. It's nice to be able to play this is what I like about what I do. It's nice to be able to play the instruments from my people. I'd like to talk to that person who talked about the appropriation thing because there's so many sides to that. But, I was thinking about it, and I always try to think sarcastically of the real stuff. I go, hey, does anybody get mad and go, hey, they're using a harp in that soundtrack. They better apologize to the Arabs, that made the early harps and the Sumerians and apologize to everybody. I mean, we're using these sounds to make something beautiful for the audience. You can't satisfy everybody, and someone's always going to go, hey, isn't that from something else, and why are you using that? Those are the ones I ignore, The appropriation thing is a new weird thing that's coming up, and I understand it, but there's some elements of it going like, let me tell you where this thing originates from, friction drums. This is a small sample of the things that are happening. They should have used this in The Exorcist.
Yeah. So, that brings two questions to mind, Martine. Number one, if somebody wanted an instrument made, that's something you're prepared to do for people on a, if possible, basis?
Call me.
That's okay.
Yeah. MartineEspino.com. Let me show you another one. Okay. I have these in most sizes. Oh, that's terrible. They killed a turtle. Why don't you ask me what happened to it first? This brings up some issues, but then no one says anything about a wooden drum, which used to be a tree.
Yeah.
No one says anything about a wooden piece of stick, which is now an oboe. Oh my God. Wow. No one says anything about the violin that has catgut strings on it. Poor kitty. You know, especially when I bring the history thing up. I'm sure glad I got armed with history. Turtle shell, the animal is thought of as we're playing it because you remember how it was when it was alive and that it gave its life for this particular purpose. You don't go and get 20 of these to get 20 instruments. You wait till one dies, or you go ahead and you eat what you kill. Oh, that's weird. And I go, that's the things my students in school say. And I go, no, it's you eat all kinds of things that are from living sources. The baby deer, and you killed the baby deer. Oh, come on. What comes off of a deer when they're real young? Their little horns. These are drop horns. They fall off. There you go. That's the deer horns. Typically played with this.
Okay.
How many times have I seen those theoretical things with these professor of anthropology, and they're going, and you see that they're showing something from the murals where you see a musician going like this to the turtle shell, and it goes, it's unknown what they have, some sort of piece of wood, maybe it's a twig, and I go, this is what we use, deer antlers. This is typical everywhere. And you saw the things like, let's see what else. Oh yeah, and then there's these. I have them in all sizes. These are rocks that I use, and so I could get. There's no room to set them up, but I have xylophones. I have a 9-foot xylophone that has these. I have one at the San Diego Botanical Gardens that's been sitting out there, but somebody started messing with it. But I had it out there for 10 years, and check it out. Hit it with another small rock, and you get.
Yeah.
This is no resonator, and they sound like this when you put them on a rug. So I line these up, and you get these suckers are loud. My trio, the musicians that we have, we had three stone xylophones that we're playing. It's insane. All the pitches are microtonal and everything, and you could tune them, but why?
Yeah.
Tune them in somebody else's key. You mean? Yeah. So let's see. What's the other one?
Well,
there's only 5. Let me just name them for you before we run out of time. Whistles, trumpets, flutes, and all their varieties. Everything has a variety. Don't think, oh, it's just one flute. Whistles, trumpets, flutes, ocarinas, and panpipes. Panpipes, I thought they were from Bolivia. No, they're from all over the world. You see them everywhere. The Solomon Islands, when they hit them with the beach shoes or whatever. So let me run down real quick. Panpipes. And I used to make I still do make a whole bunch of these in the schools before COVID came.
Yeah.
And these are gourds. I love these. And then I thought, I invented this. And then I did this movie called Dur Ebwa. It was some Ecuadorian indigenous movie that went to the Sundance Festival back in 2007. And the guy, I brought this with him because I wanted some sounds that sounded different than a panpipe. And he goes, it's the same instrument I saw in Panama. So I guess the Kuna people play a panpipe made of gourds. So I thought, I guess I never invented it. But I love the texture you get off this. I went through a lot of gourds to get that pentatonic scale. But you can also bend tones. Great for effects.
Well, the other question I had, Martine, was
Yes.
So if somebody wants you to work on film, how is the best way? Yeah, just call you, but how is the best way to work? Do you do it in your studio? Can you, what kind of?
When I did the thing for the old ways, which is coming out on Netflix on Wednesday.
Yeah.
By the way, hello Jackson. And when I did that, there he is. When I did that, they couldn't have me go to the studio, so I had to do everything at home. And they ran me over with what kind of equipment you have, what kind of cables you have, all this stuff. I sent them everything I had, and I said, "Look, let me send you a sample. Tell me if you think it's good enough for your movie." And I recorded this on this what is this? Audio Technica, some kind of Audio Technica 8471, and I played it for him, and I know how to mic things too, and so I sent everything to them, and they said no problem, and it's all on the soundtrack, so I'm really happy with it. Yeah, I did everything from home on Logic, And
Okay.
yeah, okay, so we did some wind instruments. We did the panpipes, which are, bamboo gourd. The only ones I don't have are clay. I've been waiting to make them myself. I've been into clay. The next one are the whistles, and the whistles, the variety is just freaking endless. I mean, you cannot believe the things they had then. I started, let me just show you some regular ones. Here's
Okay.
one, 3 whistles together, but when you play them together, you get all these weird harmonics. 2 little whistles are 2 ocarinas because they play 1, 2, 3 notes. When the hole's open, it's a note. When you put them together, it's out of sight.
I'm just laughing because Marcelo Rago said, you're killing my dog. So just.
Yeah, I also do that service too. No, I'm not kidding. I'm just kidding. And here's the same thing, only it's an archaeological copy. This is what I do. So I haven't made anything in like a year and a half, but I got to do it. Check it out. Poor doggy's going. Sorry, homie. And then of course there's all those whistles, and then there's the wind whistle or the death whistle. Right? This is a nutty one. It's with water, but you've probably seen it when you were a kid. But in Mexico, I don't know where else they had them, but apparently in ancient times we had these. And I have about 3 or 4 of them, all different sizes, so they make some really bizarre sounds.
Yeah.
This one is nuts. I was looking at a archaeological thing, and I was trying to copy it. And let's see, I don't know where the other one is. Here it is. Ocarina, watch. You get the ocarina, and you turn them upside down. So now you have no finger holes, just a round one tone. There's the mouthpiece. But what this one archaeological thing did is they put a wall around the mouthpiece, around the exit hole. It would be like putting a wall around this.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Look what they did. There's the ocarina, no finger holes. Turned it upside down. There is the exit hole. You could barely see.
Yeah.
And then they built a wall around it. And I had no idea. Listen what this thing sounds like. You're going to hear one sound, a low, then you're going to hear a high one. And if I manipulate it right, you get 2 at the same time. We were talking earlier about sound for sound's sake. They used sound for different reasons. They had reasons. I mean, look at the wind whistle. Can't play a song on it, but if you used 40 of these and you have an attacking person, sound do cause alarm in people, or make them mistrace their steps and and not shoot their arrows correctly or whatever. But sound does affect people. So those are the panpipes, the whistles, the trumpets. There's the gourd trumpets. This is it's sort of like a bad rendition of the only one that's described. There's really, from what all the research I've done, there's no other. I've never seen anyone with the way that Delanda described it. He said it was a long, thin wooden trumpet with twisted gourds at the end. That's all he says. So somebody got the gourd, and I got this idea from a friend of mine who did it too. And so here's this hollow gourd with a bamboo in. Well, if you do something wacky like this one, this has pieces of foam in it. It's a didgeridoo. Well, that's how you play it, but no, this is not a didgeridoo. It's a bass trumpet. Check it out. Crazy. I got 2 of these, and so when you play them, they're microtonal, so they freaking vibrate. I love that stuff, And
I can tell.
Yeah, I love the micro. And then I had the other one. There's a pair of this. There's another one of this that they're both not a semitone, like a quarter tone off. And I love that when I felt, see, what happened was with a lot of this, because like I said, the sci-fi movies and all these things I listened to, is one of the jazz musicians that I really admired was when I was like 19. I went to LA City College in Hollywood, and because I heard Don Ellis was there. And I love Don Ellis. And he started playing his quarter tone trumpet. And I went, jeez, that was freaking cool, man. I was the only one that was excited because who's this little Mexican kid from South Central in the hood going, hey, I like the quarter tone trumpet. And of course, you got the trumpets that are like this, and I have about 13 of these sitting outside. I keep them in the outside in the sun. I had a chance to sit with Steve Turre. You know who he is? That trumpet player, the trombone player from Saturday Night Live. And he, if you look him up, and he plays jazz on conch shells. Turns out he's Mexican. He isn't. And I said, you're like the first guy in the last 600 years that's probably played, 7 notes out of this. And he'd be going, and he'd be doing jazz, right? I played, I brought my gourd trumpets to Steve. I went to go see him at the bakery like 15 years ago, and I got to get in touch with him now because you may see these ones right here. I'm going to make him one, send it to him.
Cool.
But I remember he was playing these things, right? And he tries to talk all New York. He makes the sound of the trumpet. And I go, Steve, what do you think? And he goes, Martine, you got some bad shit. Thank you, brother. Yeah. So there's that. You had the panpipes, the whistles, the trumpets, and then there's the ocarinas, which are basically anything that's spherical or flattened or tubular but fat. Not like me. So here's a big one that the lady thought was a conch shell. And here's one that I made out of a gourd. The joke about this is that the other gourd, this gourd was about from here to here. I made this. The other one was green, so I ate it. I love that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, these ones I picked up over in Palenque in the state of Chiapas. And this is one that I made. It's an archaeological copy again. Crazy, huh?
Yes.
So that's just some of the stuff. And then the flutes are nuts. Let me tilt the phone just for a second so you can see.
Okay.
You know what's even better? I took a shot. And thank you for having me here. Oh, this big drum is right down here, but you can't see him.
Oh,
And so I made the paint that paints on it. So this guy's about 3.5 feet tall. And
Wow.
Doug, it's called, you had the name of the instrument, wewet. Like then the T at the end. Wewet. You said huehedel or something like that. But everybody does that. So here's some of the collection of things.
Sorry about that.
Here. It's okay, brother. That's how we do. Here are the flutes I have on the table.
Wow. Yeah.
And here's the quadruple flutes, triple flutes, double flutes. Let me play a couple real quick for you. Single flute, bamboo. Then there's also the ones that are single, that are meant to be played with a drum. Look. And of course the clay ones. Tlapitzali. Here's the tlapitzali that I made out of a gourd. And here's the little one. So I make them in all different tunings. Tunings comes up because it's not, Martine, weren't they all pentatonic? No. Oh my God, the double vibrating flutes from Colima, they're in whole steps and they're quarter tones off.
Wow.
insane sound. And so here's one a little similar to it. My friend Nash Tavewa made this for me.
Oh,
Crazy, huh? And
That's
these are
beautiful.
these
Beautiful.
are two little guys you heard me play in the beginning.
Yeah.
I made those in my ceramics class, and I paint them with my natural paints. I love this shit. This is great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things. First of all, I've got a statement to make is when I was in ASMAC a long time ago, well over 20 years, we went to Emil Richards' warehouse.
Oh, I went to his house once when he had passed away.
yeah, I was just going to mention him too. Go ahead, Glenn.
No, but this reminds me of that. Emil was just like, oh yeah, then there's this.
Yeah,
Then there's this. And percussionists are same breed everywhere. And it's like, yeah, let me hit something and see how crazy it'll sound.
yeah. Emil had a collection that was unbelievable, but you certainly are right there with him. And you, within your own voice, within your own being, you have so many instruments before you even put anything to your mouth. The sounds that you make. I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you.
So I think it's time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You must know my girl Amy Knowles.
Yeah.
She's the multi-percussionist. She's one of the very first electronic percussionists. She's the one that took me to Emil's house, and he had passed away. She lived right next door to him. So we went out looking at all these things, and it was just I never was smart enough when I was at Immaculate Heart College, which is now the AFI. I have a classical guitar degree. Right then I heard about Harry Partch, and I was just too dumb to drive to San Diego and meet the cat. I wasn't making instruments then. I was into the Renaissance and medieval stuff, and it was in '75 that I started studying these things. All these memories came back of that little television show with my dad showing it, and now I'm making things. And it's a beautiful journey. And so these are the things I can bring to your projects. Like I said, I read, but sometimes if it's really complicated, I'll have to practice it.
Yeah.
I can improvise. I can remember what I improvised, and I did the thing for the I can't say the name of the movie, but I worked with Damien Chazelle and Justin Hurwitz back in May for a new movie, and they didn't hire me as an instrumentalist. They hired me as a vocalist.
Well,
Yeah, why not?
My biggest gig in my whole life, and there I am going. We had a ball, man. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think that first of all, I'm making this as a statement, but I'm sure it's totally agreed. I think there needs to be a part 2 of this.
Yep. People are requesting it.
Yes, and
I haven't explained a lot of things. One of the things I would love to explain is how it can be used. Here's one thing. Let me just leave you with this. Okay, people think, well, maybe when we do a Mexican movie, we'll call him. That's a nice way to think about it, but think of it another way. You use a synthesizer to get sounds for some scary movie or some heavenly sound, or whatever. And what do we use? We use the orchestra. To create tension and release and fright and happiness. These do the same thing.
Yeah.
Only with these different sounds,
Right.
So check it. I mean, let's say I want something pleasurable. I want something that sounds weird. Whatever, and I think you can use everything in different. I think we have to think of these as different colors to add to your orchestra or to your or whatever you're doing.
You're right. And record those sounds and put digital delay on and do all the effect. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a really fun trip, and hopefully still will be. But those are all the things I could explain a lot more if you'd like. I would be beyond honored to come back. One other thing I was thinking of is as I was pulling some of these things out of their cases, I go, you know what? I have this big case of California native instruments that I had to I had to construct because it's not available, right? So I have I went down the list of everything that was found archaeologically, and I have nearly everything except for maybe 2 or 3 items. And so these sounds of California might be another thing to explore.
Well, it sounds very cool to me, but I think the last time we cut away to Doug, he was actually drooling. So,
I already mailed Doug some towels.
good.
They'll be coming in the mail tomorrow, Doug.
Send it over, man.
Let's take a couple questions from each guy, and then let's call it an afternoon with the promise that we will do this again.
You guys willing to do a part 2 for us, all of you?
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's great.
I want to get into the ancient Paraguayan origin of the duck call.
I want to share something with you for a moment.
Please, Alfredo.
It's for you. This is the second printing of the 3rd edition of my first book. But when you are Yaqui.
Yeah.
And you probably know Jim Griffith, the musicologist.
Who?
Jim Griffith from Tucson, Arizona. Maybe you don't, but I hope I can get this close to show you something. This photo that you see there,
Yes.
look at the harpist. These are Yaqui Indians, and look at the gentleman on one extreme. He has the cocoons dancing, the traditional
Exactly.
percussive instrument. So what happens, and you see somebody playing fiddle. So this is actually a photo taken by this musicologist, and he let me use it for my book, showing how the indigenous cultures throughout the Americas, when the Spanish brought their instruments, they had to adapt them to their traditions. And in this case, you see how they are using fiddling and a harp, but still doing the Pascola dance, where would go into a trance practically, going like never ending, a couple of days or so, I understand, and this repetitive pattern. And they do, of course, it would not be using a melodic way, it's a repetitive patterns using these instruments added to their traditional other instruments. And then in the case of the harp in the Andean region, somebody was mentioning earlier about the Peruvian harp. That is a big influence of the Andean music of the Incas and the other cultures. And the music is so foreign to us from other areas, because in the case of Venezuela, Paraguay, Chile, and so on, really mostly of what we see is derived from the Spanish culture.
Right.
And some rhythmic element. And for example, in the case of the Venezuelan plains, the maracas, which is the rattles, that's an indigenous element. Right. But in the case of the Andean harp style, I don't play that. I always tell people, check it out online. It's fascinating. And I got to see in person in the Andes in Peru, when on a market Sunday, coming single lines of the local indigenous people to the market. First would be the musicians, followed, depending on the beautiful costumes and hand sculptured scepters, some of them with silver and so on. And the harp was one of the elements. And in order to walk down, they actually adapt that. They play the harp upside down. They use a sling, and on that sling, the curved part of the harp, they may even carve a little hooks to facilitate putting it there. So they actually come down the mountain playing the harp, coming down and then the harps have incredibly long legs, and you wonder, how can you play with that? The legs are actually designed to be a counterweight so that the harp will stay in a comfortable position. So those instruments are never intended to be played sitting with the harp like this. They are intended to have the harp upside down in the air, and those legs are not really legs, they are counterweights, similar to what a balancing beam, somebody with those big long poles to stay on the rope. That's the way they do it. If you go online, you can do a search for Peruvian harp or arpa peruana. There is a specific traditional dance from Peru which is fascinating. It's called Danza de las Tijeras. Is Spanish for scissors dance. The scissors in the old Spanish times, they were not with the mechanical, nicely made precision scissors of today. They usually have two parts that separated. There was like a little thing that would kind of make them hook. So they get those apart and they use them like almost like effective castanets with that. And it's the dances and some sort. I have to warn you that some of those have some kind of a weird masochistic things because they hurt themselves and they put wires and things. It's something from the traditional indigenous. And this dance of the tijeras is done while the harp is playing upside down and the other instruments playing music of the Andes. So if you have a chance, that is really out of the norm, like one really incredible side of the Latin American harp that hardly anybody sees because it's not something that just in a commercial way. It's very unique.
Well, Alfredo, next time
Danza de las Tijeras.
I want to see you play your harp upside down the next time, okay?
Oh, thank you. I'll do that after Gail plays upside down her pedal harp.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So, I'm not seeing many questions in the chat window, but I am seeing a thing. I'm going to generalize it a little more. It says Martin's passion for these instruments is contagious. I've seen Alfredo play a few times, and it's absolutely true of him. And Doug, from talking to Doug about how important his sample libraries are to them and how important it is to do it right and do it well, I know that's true of him as well. So
talk about a marriage, the three of you. I mean, what a marriage this has been for us today.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious. I've got one quick question for Alfredo. What are our strings made of on the Paraguayan harps?
They used to be gut.
And now?
Now everybody switched to nylon.
And what do you
So
have
the
on
bass-
the, what do we have on ours?
For the bass strings, they have nylon fiber core wrapped with nylon. That's the standard, and that happened throughout Latin America. But before it was, and of course in many areas, metal strings, especially in the highs.
Yes.
In the Andean region, it's very common to have the high notes metal, and they got for the bass notes.
Right.
So I think people would use whatever was available and easy to obtain. Of course, once the nylon appeared and the survival rate of the strings was dramatically increased. And they would use, in Venezuela, they use fishing line, which has some added things that make them flexible. So some of those strings that were used when I began learning to play, you had to tune and tune and tune because these things were giving and giving and giving. They were not stabilized. Then the different qualities of nylons became generalized, and now you buy the guitar strings like that. But many times people would buy fishing line and then cut the pieces and the different diameter fishing lines to use on their instruments. Of course, those are not the ideal nylon strings. Those are not the ones that we use. I use professional level nylon strings for instruments, which are done specially for that. But I remember one moment in Venezuela when I was a kid, still not even dreaming of playing the harp. We were driving in a mountain region. Venezuela has two types of harps. The most common one, which is the national style harp, is called the arpa llanera or arpa venezolana. Llanera means from the plains. But then I was with my family, a car blew a tire. My father was walking because we didn't have the spare in good condition. So as we were walking to the next station where they could fix it, we heard this music coming from a home. And I was fascinated to find a man playing the harp, not with the nylon strings that were already common in Venezuela, but all metal strings. His harp was much wider body. Mm-hmm. And there was no accompaniment with the cuatro, which is the traditional style of the plains. He only had a maraca player, singer, and the harp. And that was what they call the central Venezuelan harp. It has different names, harpa tuyera or something. And the style was very different. This man played with special cymbals in his fingers that were artificial metallic nails, very high speed, and these pieces were very long with different sections that were changing. Eventually, my friend Fernando Guerrero, who today is a lawyer and has a doctorate in pedal harp in Venezuela, he actually has written books about the Venezuelan harp in recent years. And he has talked about this particular type of harp and how some of these musical forms, with the recording era, they became the 3-minute long pieces that we are used to, 3 to 4 minutes long. But they used to be these very long pieces with sections, like what I experienced that, and that only time in my life I saw that live. It's very few people play still that style in Venezuela. But it was really another world and a different sound with all the metal strings and the style of the music that this gentleman was playing.
Well,
I was like 12 years, and I'm 74, so figure out.
it's interesting because I know you have your Celtic harps. I have my Celtic harps, one strung in nylon, one strung in harpsichord wire. And the difference in the sound is, I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's dramatically different.
Yeah.
And also remember that our harps still have much less tension.
That's right.
So even with those metal strings, it's not like you see a Celtic harp with metal strings. Those are super stiff. To me,
Yes.
My goodness. Even on my pedal harp, I have a hard time. I compose on it. I don't play. I'll never forget the time when I tried to play one piece, the Natterman Sonatina #1 for Suzanne McDonald. She started laughing loud. I said, "What am I doing wrong, Susanna?" She said, "Nothing. You are just giving it a nice Latin beat." But it's an amazing variety of harps, each one's with their own unique techniques. But like I said, though, today, I myself introduce a lot of our techniques now are being used by many pedal harpists and people that play Celtic harp, but even throughout Latin America, they have been sharing the styles and sharing the unique techniques and effects that they knew how to do. And now you see people playing Mexico and you go, well, but that he's using all techniques from Paraguay, or the other one is adding this from Venezuela and so on.
Well, I remember one time, because for those of you who don't know that are with us today, we basically use 4 fingers on the harp. We don't use our pinky because it's too short and it would throw your whole hand position off. But one day I went to a local farmer's market in Hollywood, like on a Sunday morning, and there was a fellow that was sitting on the ground and he was playing a little harp, right? A little harp, and he was using all 5 fingers. And he just kept rotating his hand. That's the first time and only time I'd ever seen that. Have you ever seen that?
I have a friend who is a great virtuoso in Mexico. He's from Paraguay. And he actually has developed some technique with 5 fingers. You need to have a very long 5th finger and so on to survive. Otherwise, you could. Part of my background is in music therapy, prevention of injury. I teach workshops. So
Yes.
On the contrary, I recommend not to do, because it would create a lot of strain in the back of the hand, which could cause injury. But he has managed very well. Like I said, maybe he has a very long finger, or uses only in a smaller chord positions that are possible to do that. And our spacing is smaller, because on a pedal harp to try to do something that pinky, I don't know, unless you cut it and move it there. You're never going to reach.
Oh my God, what a gift.
By the way, I should have mentioned, his name is Celso Duarte. His son, also Celso Duarte, is a virtuoso player of the Paraguayan harp, born in Mexico. And Celso Duarte changed dramatically the technique of the Mexican harpists, because he established himself in Paraguay, in Mexico, quite a few decades back. And he's so fantastic. People started looking at how he was doing. So the people that play in a much simpler way and techniques, the Mexican harps observe him. So they incorporated all of that. So he has been a tremendous influence in the growth of the overall technique and the playing level of the harp in general in Mexico, the different types of harps.
Fascinating. It's all 3 of you today are absolutely, I mean, my mind is just, it's gone from whatever scope it had. It's not like this. It's just enormous.
And I'm so glad the call that was supposed to happen 1 hour ago never did. They are late. I think it could be a traffic issue, because I was supposed to have a meeting, but they're here. So
Yeah,
I'm very happy I could.
we are too, because that meant were able to stay with us. So
Yes,
we need to get you all back. All of you, Doug, all of you, we need to get
Let's
you
do
back
it.
for part 2.
Martine, we should get together one day and do some crazy improvised recording of some things.
Let's
Wouldn't
do
that
it.
be fun?
Because I love improvising.
Jam.
Try some.
Can you do Can you do one on Zoom right now? What would happen? You could trade twos.
We wouldn't be in time. There's no app that will allow us to play in time. But
Yeah, you'd have to trade
Well,
fours. Yeah.
I can improvise something.
Let's do
You can try.
Just give me
Right?
a key, man.
Well, it'll be out.
It doesn't matter. We don't need a key. Why? There's the microphones here.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
I can try it. And let's go. Let's
Alfredo,
go
play-
weird.
Alfredo, play something, and then Doug do like a background, and I'll do like a background.
Okay.
Okay. All we need is some tequila now.
I'm playing sitar with us.
Nice,
Very nice.
nice,
When's the
organic, very.
record's coming out next week?
Glenn, do you need to say something more? Ooh,
Ooh.
Yeah, I was loading up a piano.
oh, cool.
Nadie comprende lo que sufro yo.
Who needs timing, right?
Right.
Kenny Youngman said, timing.
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 Speaking of timing, this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, we're going to have a big band hang-in-ar featuring Andy Farber and Scott Healy. We're going to try to find a woodwind chair for Martine. And then next Saturday, a masterclass, creating music for any situation. We'll have to send Ira this clip, featuring Ira Hershen and moderated by Sylvester Rivers. And if you're interested in the Brazilian Soundtrack Fest, go to soundtrackfest.com. And as I said, I know John Ottman is going to be there. And I also know that Bruce Broughton is going to be there, among others. So if it could be a very cool thing.
Muito bom. Fala português, eu.
Gail, I'm going to turn it over to you to say good evening.
Okie dokie. All righty. So, dear friends, I think we could all be arrested for having too much fun. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Martine, Alfredo, Doug. Thank you so much for today. And
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We will make a part 2 of this because
Awesome.
there's just knowing that we can give you more time. You've got much more to expound on, and who knows where this is all going to go, but it's fantastic. So everybody, please, just don't forget to click on the 3 dots at the bottom of the chat and to save everything, which I've got to do myself. And we should really put on if you haven't got your cameras on, put them on and let's have some applause for our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, so anyway, so again, a huge, huge thank you. I also want to thank, who I do every week, our wonderful Evita Wagner. It's her birthday. Evita, I hope you've had so much fun with all of us today. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday, Vita.
Happy birthday, Vita. We thank you so much for always taking care of us, everything technical. You are, oh my God, if I only had your mind. Anyway, but thank you. And to Glenn is just fantastic in the way he just interacts with our guests and brings the questions in, but everything just feels, it's just like seamless. It's just great. So Glenn, thank you for everything you do. And to Jeff Kellum, who
Thank
keeps
you so much.
continually putting all the links up in the chat for us to be able to go and refer to. Jeff, thumbs up for you. And needless to say, not last, not least, but the best, Milton Nelson, our producer, who brings us all
right,
together.
Milton.
Thank
We
you.
love you, Milton.
Milton.
And everyone, as Ken just said, please come and join us for a really fun evening, which will be happening next Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Our big band, Hanginar, featuring Andy Farber and Scott Healy. And then next Saturday, we're going to have our master class with Sylvester Rivers, hosting the great, the one, the only Ira Hershen. And then we're going to take the following Saturday off, which is going to be for our Labor Day holiday. But we have a very busy September in store for all of you. So please watch our website. Join us if you can. Our website is www.asmac.org. If you feel so inclined, if you want to become part of our family as a member, we wouldn't say no. We would love that. And so just give it a little thought. You can join at whatever level works for you. And then, as I said, click on those 3 dots, which I have to keep remembering. I've got to do that myself. And as I say every week to all of you, is the most important thing is to really just stay well, stay safe, keep a smile in your heart, keep the music going. I added that. I don't usually say that. And I look forward to seeing you at our next event. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gail.
Goodbye.
Awesome.
They just arrived. I'm glad they were late.
Great seeing everybody.
Right. Timing. It's all called timing. We need
It's all
Evita,
timing. Perfect
right.
timing.
and we need Evita to close us out because every event, I love it. She closes us out with her signature good night. So Evita.
¿Dónde está Vida?
Evita,
We're not having a.
He's hiding.
can't see you.
There she is.
There you are. There you are.
Thank you, Vida.
Thank
If
you.
you
Evita.
notice the little logo that's on all of the sheep that are behind her. Birthday, Evita.
All right, say goodnight, Evita. Thanks to everybody, and thanks for everybody showing up today and spending an afternoon or evening, whatever it may be.
Yes.
So say goodnight, Evita.
And tell Alfredo, tell your friend to thank you for being late. Evita, sorry.
They're outside, so I better go open the door.
Okay.
I'm just saying through the windows.
All right.
Well, goodbye, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
Well,
This
say
was
good-
awesome.
Thanks, Doug.
Say goodnight,
Thank you.
Evita.
Milton,
Say goodnight,
Glenn,
Evita.
thank you.
Always on
noches.
Netflix next week.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Ya nos vamos.
I'll play us off.
Wonderful. Oh, yeah.
That's all I got to say about that.
I had so much fun today. Thank
This was
you
a blast.
all. Thank you so much. Click the chat. Click it. I'm going to click it again right now. Here it goes. Save chat. Thanks,
Say-
Milton.
Say goodnight, Evita.
Good night, Vida.
Good night, Evita.
Good night, Evita. We love you.
Gotta be a happy birthday.
Thank you. So appreciate